Hi, welcome to No Limits Radio TV.com. I am Candace Fleszar-Smith, and I am solo today because my co-host David had surgery, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we can't do our special handshake that we usually do at the beginning of the show, but we will bring that back as soon as he does, and as soon as he returns. And so I want to make sure, if you haven't followed us yet, make sure you look us up on Facebook under No Limits Radio TV. Also Twitter, follow our YouTube, so please subscribe to that. And we're also on Instagram. So we're all over the place, and we're always happy to hear your feedback. So thanks for joining us. And so David had surgery. So to explain his surgery a little bit, he had an injury in his arm where the bone detached in his arm, and he had to get it reattached. The problem was that every time it got reattached, whatever substance they used in there was rejected every time. So he'd have a surgery that put it in, then it would be rejected. He'd have to have another surgery that took it out, then it'd have to heal, and then they did another surgery to put in something different, and then that one didn't work and had to take that out. So in his history, which he talked about on our June 14th show in a lot of detail, if you want to go back to the June 14th show, but on his 13th surgery, he went into a coma, was in a coma for a few months, woke up paralyzed, still has a floating bone in his arm, which causes a lot of pain, which is why he's on a lot of pain medications. And so this most recent surgery that he had was to try a new substance to see if that would attach. We were hoping maybe he could make it back today, but he is still healing from his surgery, and I am going to show a picture of what his arm looks like right now. So you can see it's all stitched up. This is actually his hand right here. So you can see he has stitches all the way up his arm. So he's having some trouble with the healing, which I'm guessing is right in this area. And they're not sure what's going on yet, so he's going back to the doctor to figure it out. Hopefully, the substance that's in there can stay in there and won't have to worry about taking it out again. So I hope that ultimately this ends up being a good solution for him. So we miss him, but we're hoping he heals well and heals fairly quickly to the point where at least maybe he's feeling better than he was before and not in as much pain. So that's where David is. So please send him good wishes, and you can go on his Facebook page too, which is David Reid Christine, No Limits Radio TV. And you can go on that on Facebook and send him some good wishes and happy healing and all of that. So thank you for joining me. And so today I have a guest who you may have heard of him. He's been called things like Superhuman. He is somebody who confronted his own fears, confronted his own issues, and not only overcame them, but then started using them to help others. So he is a mega-athlete. His name is Jim Dreyer, and Jim, please come on. Yay!
Well, thank you,
Hi,
Candace.
thank you for coming out. It's great to meet you.
You know, if my arm became detached like that, I'd just swim in circles, I think, right? So
You'd have to get some sort of prosthetic. But
yeah.
That wouldn't be all you.
Yeah, that would be not a good thing.
Yeah, I know. So thank you for joining me.
Happy to
I am, you've been, if I understand correctly, you have 19 world records
that is correct.
You've done? Okay,
yes.
And we're going to slide through some pictures here as we talk about it. But can you talk about, first of all, what you do? Like, what does it mean that you're this super athlete? What does it mean? Like, what got you there? You know, like, what do you do that makes you that makes you stand out?
It has been such a long road. It really has. And I think what is really unusual is that I started out with such a fear of the open water. You know, I nearly drowned when I was 3 years old. My sister pulled me out of the water and saved my life. I make sure she gets a birthday card on her birthday every year.
Yes,
you know,
good.
Right?
Yeah, that's good. Good brother.
Right. And so, you know, it was Yeah, I was 32 years old when I decided, I think it's time to address my greatest fear. I always admired triathletes. I knew I could run, I knew I could bike, but swimming would make you put your face in the water. And I thought, if you face your greatest fear, every other hurdle you face in life is going to seem that much smaller. And that's really how it all started. And people started to notice, including my coach, which incidentally, he was filling in for a lifeguard the day when I first started trying to teach myself how to swim, which doesn't work very well when you don't want to put your face in the water.
Right, so he saw you out there struggling.
Yeah, I swam 12 lengths of the pool vertically, like Tarzan, right? 'Cause I didn't want to put my face in the water, and he came down, he introduced himself. He was actually very polite, and he just says, hello, my name's Mike Landis. I'm actually a swimming coach, and he said, I've been getting tired just watching you swim. He said, but you've proven you have a lot of endurance. If you come back next Thursday, we can get started on some swimming lessons. I thought, hey, great, me, one-on-one with a coach, maybe that's what I need. Well, I came back the next Thursday, and everybody else in the class was about this tall. He didn't mention that, so those were my humble beginnings. But as I started swimming, people started to notice, including Mike, my coach, that I just had this uncanny ability to just go and go and go, and I didn't tire. And first I had to learn some techniques. I had none. But before I could learn the technique, I had to learn to control the fear. And, controlling fear is so liberating, because a fear like a childhood drowning, or I'm sure we'll talk about later, the tragedies that, the trauma that soldiers and first responders see on a daily basis. It's like sticking your hand in wet cement. It leaves an imprint. It's never really going to go away, but you learn how to control it.
Right.
One thing led to another, and eventually I'm being recognized as a superhuman when it was my greatest fear. And the pendulum has swung so far from one direction to the other that now it's my playing field. It's my office. Who could have seen that coming?
Right, that's great. And I'm glad that you brought up on bringing up your fear and overcoming things, because with our show, that's a big thing about what our show focuses on. We do a lot of healing through laughter, so we do laugh a lot. But so many of us have been through things that just about destroyed us, that had us on the basement floor, curled in the ball, sobbing, all of that. And so I love that your story started with, I had to kick this. Like, this fear was controlling me, and I finally said, you know what? I gotta take it over. I gotta take command of it. And so many people have had to do that with different things in their life. I've had to do it in my own life with things, and I love that your story starts like that. That it's not just, hey, I was a champion swimmer in high school, and
Not at all.
It's not that. It's that you did this by overcoming.
Yeah, it's a very liberating thing when you control that greatest fear that's been controlling you.
Right, right. So can you talk about when you were 3? What do you remember, or what does family say about what happened?
Yeah, I do remember it, because I actually, even with 19 world records, I flash back. Every time I start a swim, and especially if there's a sandy bottom, first few strokes you take and you're seeing that sandy bottom, I flash back to when I was 3, and I was floating face down, and my feet wouldn't reach the bottom, and I couldn't breathe. And being 3, you don't really know what's happening to you, but you realize, I need to breathe. And I will still flash back to that, which means it goes back to that imprint in the cement. It never really goes away, but I quickly control it. Like, Jim, you've been here 1,000 times. You're fine. You just start getting back into the rhythm, and you can control the fear. It was an Easter Sunday. I was at my family's cottage, and I had a little toy fishing pole. Mom had me dressed in this big, thick snowsuit, because it was still kind of cold. And I dropped the pole in the water, bent over to pick it up, and fell face first into water over my head.
In a snowsuit.
In a snowsuit.
Yeah.
And it was just bulky. I couldn't move. I was floating face down. My sister was looking out the cottage window. Had she not seen me floating there, that would have been it. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, as you mentioned that, I fell into the water once in my snowsuit. and we just had a creek, but my sister had to drag me out. I was probably about 2 or 3.
Okay,
My sister dragged me out and took me home sopping wet. So
well, it's similar, yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't anywhere close to where you were. So every time you get in the water, if there is a sandy bottom, you go back to that trigger. It's a trigger for you.
It is a trigger.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And as we'll talk about later, I mean, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yep.
they all have triggers.
Yep, absolutely. And so how did you, so you started swimming, which, overcoming your fear of water. How did it become 19 world records?
Well, basically, the facility that I was training at, they had what they called the Lake Michigan Swim Challenge, and it was in Holland, Michigan. And they had a chart on the wall, and they had the distance measured from Holland, Michigan to the Mackinac Bridge. And kind of as a health challenge, they had a race from Holland to the bridge. And so every day when you'd swim, you'd tell the lifeguard on duty how far you swam that day. And then you'd race to the bridge. Well, about that time, I was really starting to get the technique down. I was starting to really control the fear. And people started to notice, okay, this is unusual. Which, once again, if you don't face your fears, sometimes there may be a skill that you're going to miss. You'll never know. And I made it all the way to the bridge and back to Holland before anybody made it to the bridge.
Wow.
And so then I said to my coach, I took him aside.
Yeah.
And it was in October of 1997. And I said, Mike, I said, I've got probably what's a crazy idea. But I was thinking about, what if I swam all the miles in that Lake Michigan Swim Challenge, but I did them at once, and I made it a real Lake Michigan Swim Challenge. I want to swim across Lake Michigan. And up until that point, and still today, nobody has ever swam directly across Lake Michigan between Wisconsin and Michigan except me. There's been a handful of people that swam along the, kind of near the shoreline along the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, the Indiana to Chicago, lower Michigan to Chicago, that type of thing.
Is that about where the ferry boat goes?
Where I swam,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. In fact, we've seen the ferry boat 6 times. They're back, they're back, they're back. And yeah, so, you know, he said, well, he said, conceivably, you know, and I started explaining my plan, you know, and how I'd have a support boat and they would be feeding me, and, you know, he could see that I had clearly thought this idea through. And he said, well, you know, you're a rookie, but I've never seen a rookie like you before. He said, if anybody could do it, I think you could do it.
So you were
Let's get
32
busy
when
on
you
it.
learned to swim. So
Yes.
at what point was this? How old were you?
I think I was 33 or just turned 34.
Okay, so this is within
Because-
a year or so of learning to swim.
Yeah, yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was, because when I successfully swam Lake Michigan, I got in the water on August 1, 1998, and I finished on August 3, 1998. My birthday's August 16, so it was just before my 35th birthday. I was still technically 34.
Yes, you were. now that we're on the older end of things,
Yeah.
it's like, no, I'm not there yet. Not till the day.
That's right. You know, there's something funny about that date, August 3, because I saved Lake Superior for last, for good reason.
It's a big cold
rough,
lake.
nastiest body of fresh water on the planet.
Yes, yes.
And I saved it for last, and I finished that swim on August 3. And my hometown of Byron Center, Michigan, claimed August 3 is Jim the Shark Dreyer Day.
Nice.
In Byron. They had a parade and certificate and the whole bit, which I was really, really, really flattered.
Yeah, that's great.
And but the funny thing is before that, they threw the parade after the Lake Michigan swim and made the designation. I did not have a nickname, the Shark.
Oh.
They put it on the plaque,
Yeah.
and they made it Jim the Shark Dreyer Day, and then the nickname stuck. So that's where it all started.
That's where you got your nickname.
Yeah,
So
really.
Like, okay.
From my hometown. Go figure.
That's perfect.
But I
That's
liked
awesome.
it. You know, hence the shirt, right?
That's right. It's perfect. You are the shark. And I know I have your logo here. We could pull it up. So
there it is.
That's where this started, is Jim the Shark Dreyer. And it's nice because it, I mean, it kind of looks like a swimming type of motion.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like a shark, but also just the
Movement, yeah.
the movement.
Yeah.
Very
I
cool.
came up with it myself, actually.
Yeah, I like it. Good
Thank
job.
you.
So your records, can you run through them and what makes them unique? Because I know some of them you did things that other people have done, but you did them in a different way.
Right, and sometimes I broke my own record. Like Lake Michigan was the customary way, if there is such a thing as a customary way of swimming across the Great Lake. I followed a support boat, didn't touch the support boat. They fed me from the water, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day in the water. But you do have a boat there looking after you. And being the first one to go, directly from Wisconsin to Michigan, that was a record. Lake Huron ended up being the furthest swim in Lake Huron. I made a crossing right from the tip of the thumb of Michigan. It's a mitten, right? Right? And then across to near the Kincardine, Ontario area.
Okay.
There had been a few crossings down where the lake narrows a little bit it continues to narrow as it comes into Port Huron. So there's been some various swims down there. Still all great swims, but I thought, what is the furthest distance at this point that I could swim where everybody would agree that's the furthest he could have swam beyond getting ridiculous? And that was from that tip of the thumb. Once you get past that thumb, then it's like,
If you're looking from the camera, it's actually more like this, and then like this is Michigan for people that don't know Michigan. That's the state of Michigan, and then Canada is right here.
Well, you're good.
So it's the tip of the thumb over to Canada. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that was a record. Then it got interesting.
So that's lake number 2.
Right.
Okay.
Then it got really interesting because I thought, well, there's Erie and Ontario. Now, I didn't announce all at once I was going to do all 5 Great Lakes. I think people kind of figured it out after I did Huron. But I figured for the marketing oomph, I was supporting Big Brothers Big Sisters at the time.
Right, right.
So we wanted to get as much marketing oomph as we could for the cause.
Right.
So,
and many of your swims are cause related. So.
Yeah, actually they were every single one of
Even
them
the
except
first
for
one.
except for the Stanley Superhumans where they just wanted me to be on the show.
Right. Yep. Okay.
And it was a real quick hurry up.
Yeah.
Do it our way, conform to what we want thing.
Okay. So you're also doing this for others. So okay. So number 2 was Huron.
Right.
Okay.
Then there's Erie and Ontario, which are both narrower. And so I thought I got to keep this interesting for the media. I mean, if he's already done Michigan and Huron, where's the drama to say, well, now I'm going to do a swim that's less than what I've already done. So I thought, let's get back to my triathlon roots. And my plan was to swim across Lake Erie, which was going to be like a 26-mile swim, and then bike 112 miles, which is an Ironman distance bike, up to Lake Ontario, and then swim 32 miles across Lake Ontario into Toronto. And do this in all one continuous event. So I call a press conference at the Grand Rapids Community College. Good turnout, which I was happy about. Made posters, had all these displays, really ready. And I was ready for the questions like, Jim, this sounds impossible. How do you propose to do this? This just doesn't sound humanly possible. Can't be done. So I'm ready for all those questions. They never came. It was all the questions were like, well, when are you going to start? How long do you think it's going to take you? And I was disappointed because I'm like, do you guys I mean, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, do you realize what I'm proposing here? But after I'd already swam Michigan and Huron, they just thought, well, Jim Dreyer says he can do it. He'll do it.
Yeah.
Do you realize?
Yeah.
The swimming, the running, the biking, and then going back to the swimming, and then,
You needed your key messages to here's what I want to cover.
Right.
You were waiting for them to ask.
Right. And instead they were just like, well, when are you going to do it? Okay. I'm waiting for the drama. I tried to create all the drama. But there ended up being drama.
Yeah.
Because I swam across Erie. There's quite a current at the end. I was struggling, fighting quite a bit at the end, but got in there, still felt great, ran ashore. The media is meeting me on the shore. Quickly changed into my running clothes and started running down this long sandy peninsula called Long Point. It ends up in a town called Port Rowan, and that's where I was going to get on my bike. Well, 17.1 of the 26.2 miles I was going to run was all through beach sand. So I'm running, and some of the media is running with me, the media that was in shape.
Yeah.
You would have been running with me, Candace, I'm sure.
I have a knee issue.
Knee issue, arm issue, man.
I know.
What goes on in this
We're all
studio?
beat up. We're all beat
what
up.
happens in here, guys?
we come in with scars.
Got clubs and. But anyway, as I'm running down the beach, I start getting really dizzy and I'm zigzagging all over the place. And I called for my paramedic and I said, I think I need some oxygen. I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
And I remember one media person with a microphone asking me, well, how do you feel? I said, I feel great. I just can't stay conscious. How is that possible? How can you feel great, but you just can't stay conscious? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we learned a lot after the fact. Going from horizontal for the length of time it takes to swim across the Great Lake and then going vertical and then exerting vertically. First, the blood was flowing from your heart horizontally. Now it has to pump uphill to your brain. It's tougher, and you start to become oxygen deficient in the brain. You start to lose consciousness. Another thing is your wetsuit is compressing against your body. It's like a compression suit. And then when you take that off, my paramedic explained this to me. Something with the veins is different too.
Right, they're not being pressed on, they're more free-flowing. Okay.
Right, and so the blood's flowing differently because of that too. And so basically what happened is I made it through the run, which is tough. It's, you know, tough run through the sand anyway. Made it into Port Rowan, got on my bike, and instantly lost consciousness. Boom!
Wow. You had a helmet on?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's really hard to bicycle, to bike when you're unconscious.
Yeah.
I learned that.
Yeah.
And so they, you know, the crew did the smart thing and called off the swim. And I remember, you know, I did a few interviews then, but I was doing an interview in the car on the way back. This is the first time I heard this. A reporter asked me, Jim, how does it feel now that you failed?
Oh.
And I'm like,
what?
wow. And it's not, you know, it's not because I'm, you know, so arrogant that I can't handle failure. I set myself up. I set the bar really high. But actually, what I had just done is I had set a new solo duathlon world record. But I was going for a triathlon world record.
Oh, wow.
So that was viewed as a failure, even though I came home with a record.
Because you said, I'm going to do this.
Right, I was going to do a triathlon solo world record, and I only came home with a duathlon world record.
That's it, man. That's a bummer.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, this is the jaded world we live in.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, is just in general, people don't understand what it is. People don't understand the exertion and how unusual it is. Sort of like you were saying at your news conference, how people weren't asking what you thought they should ask because you're like, this is a big deal.
I know.
But those of us who, you know, would rather like binge on Netflix, you know, we don't quite get. Like, oh, okay, well, he's just really athletic and he can do this. And people run triathlons all the time. And what, you know, like sort of like, yeah, it's bigger, but they don't quite understand how big.
Yeah. What I've found is I've really gravitated toward the military. A lot of my crew is military. A lot of my best friends are military. It's just good to be surrounded with people who have that same mindset. They get it.
Right. They know how hard it is. And
I'll sometimes be in crowds where I'll be talking and just somebody will ask me a question and I'll just I'll give them the honest answer.
Yeah.
And it never occurs to me it's unusual because I'm just so used to it. I've been doing it for so long until I look and see everybody with their mouths hanging open. I'm like, oh, that's weird, right? You know? But I came back a month later, got together with my crew, and we figured out physiologically what had happened. You know, the whole horizontal to vertical thing. And I said, we need to change this.
And I want to say, the reason that doesn't happen in triathlons is that people aren't swimming as far. Is that why? Because people in triathlons, people do that. They swim, they bike, they run. So they are horizontal, vertical. But the difference was that you had gone how many miles?
Well, by the time I was done, it was 30 miles.
30 miles swimming.
And then I biked 100. Well, no, then I ran 26.2.
Right.
In the sand.
So it was that difference. Okay.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, in an organized triathlon, they always have the swim first because they don't want, you know, for liability reasons, a bunch of tired swimmers getting in the water.
Right, right.
Which makes sense.
Right.
We decided that for the length of time I'm going to be swimming, I need to do the vertical stuff first. I need to run and bike first and swim last. Now, there's no book you can check out of the library. I'm dating myself there. There's nothing you can research on Google.
That you can look up on microfiche.
Right, exactly. Wow, I just said library. For the young people, the library is a building. It's got lots of books in it. Okay?
And I'm just putting up some video you have here that's
some rough water
swimming and stuff, swimming, running, all that, the stuff
beach,
we're talking about now, biking.
Yep, exactly. But there was no precedent. So we're learning as we're going along. And, you know, did we really know that it was a good idea to do the vertical stuff first and then try to swim last? Or was I setting myself up to drown? I don't know.
Right.
We didn't know, but we knew the other way didn't work.
Yeah.
So I thought, I think this is going to work. So we started at the end of Long Point, that same place where I started the run, the Long Sandy Peninsula.
Right.
Ran 26.2 miles into Port Rowan, Ontario. Felt great. Got on my bike. The crew took a wrong turn. Instead of 112, I biked 130 miles. It happens.
You know?
You know,
Just
what's
miles.
a few more miles. Ended up at Niagara-on-the-Lake, swam 32 miles into Lake Ontario, and I had accomplished my triathlon.
Yeah.
But then I kind of surprised people and said, but you know what? Originally, I was going to swim Erie and Ontario in the same event.
Right.
So I've accomplished my triathlon, but I want to do a double crossing of Ontario because I didn't cross Erie this time.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, okay. So I turned around and I started swimming back, you know, to Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yeah.
And I almost made it, but it just, a storm was moving in. It just kept getting rougher and rougher and rougher. And 13 miles from the coast, they finally pulled me from the water because we had a big sailboat with a big keel as a support boat, but I remember swimming beside that boat and seeing that keel come way up out of the water.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you know, they were starting to think about capsizing, which is very unusual to do in a sailboat with, with a large keel. So, you know, when the captain says, that's it, you know, for the safety of everybody on board.
Right.
And so almost 13 miles short of a double crossing. But physiologically, we figured out how to do this.
And was that still was that a new world record then?
Yep.
So
when I made it to Toronto, it technically was. Everything
Yeah.
else was going to be icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And I just said, I was going to do Erie and Ontario in the same swim, so I want to do a double crossing.
Right, right.
But Mother Nature always wins.
Yeah, yeah, because that's a factor you have to deal with. So what are, I'm just going to back this up again. We can watch it again. What are the factors, like when you're out there in the water, and we'll talk about the physical stuff too, of course, but let's just talk about outside influences. Weather, waves, currents, wind, you know, what is it that you're dealing with out there that you have no control over?
Yes, all things that you're not dealing with in the swimming pool. You know, in the swimming pool, you've got lane lines, you got a line on the bottom of the pool you're following. In my earlier swims, I had a support boat that I would follow. In my later swims, I didn't, and we can get to that later. With the advent of technology, you can now be tracked. And I just thought there was more drama in doing things solo. Plus, I also found there was less risk when there's not 8 to 10 other lives at risk, when I'm just risking my own. But you're right, when you get in the open water, cold water is probably the worst thing. And with our bodies being 98.6, is that correct? 98.6? Yeah, 98.6, I believe that's correct.
There,
Thinking back to biology here. Even 70-degree water, if you're in it long enough, you will get hypothermic.
Yeah.
But the colder it is, you know, the worse. And you'll get into some worse, or some colder pockets. You'll get into some upwellings, which everybody here in Michigan especially knows about. You get the, if we get an east wind, it blows that warm surface water out, and the cold water from underneath rolls in from underneath,
and that's
that replaces it. That's called an upwelling.
Okay, I knew that, but I didn't know what it was called.
Yes.
So, and I'm from Michigan.
So
okay. I didn't actually know that name for it.
And it actually happens on the other side more because they get the prevailing westerly winds more.
I had that happen in Lake Superior once because I was camping there years ago, and we got to the camping site really late. It was right on the lake, and we were really tired. We had to set up our tent, but we just went in the water. We're like, oh my God, it's so warm. Like, this is awesome. Like, I can't believe this is Lake Superior.
It
and it was like June, July. And it was so warm. We couldn't believe it. But we're like, oh, we're so tired. Let's just set up the tents and sleep, and we'll go in tomorrow. And the next day we tried going in, and it was so cold that it was painful.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, the switch like that was.
Oh, it'll drop 20, 30 degrees overnight.
Right. Now I have a word for it. But
yep, that's obviously what happened.
It was shocking, to say the least. But it really was. Like, we tried to stay in the water, and it hurt. Try to stay in the water. Yeah, it was painful.
If you drank it, it would probably hurt your teeth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, cold water is the worst. Waves and current, would be a close second. I mean, storms can whip up at any time. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, obviously, you have to fight through the waves. I've actually brought some props to show you some of the
Yes, I'd love to see them.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you want to go snag them, or somebody can, just go ahead and grab them.
Let me, I am going to show you this first.
Okay, let's start with the stuff that helps with weather, maybe.
Yes, in the waves.
And this is,
This is good strength training for fighting through waves. It's also good strength training if you're pulling a 27-ton car ferry.
There you
but
go,
that's a
which
whole nother
we'll
story.
talk about also, yeah.
Yep. But basically, what this is, it is a 20-gallon bucket, and I don't know if the audience will be able to see this or not,
they can,
but there is a small there we go, small half-inch diameter hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
So, these hook around my ankles in a figure 8.
Uh-huh.
The buoy is in between for 2 reasons. One reason so that you're seen by boats, so you're not run over.
Right.
But the other thing is if this bucket that you're dragging underwater is moving all over, this stays stationary and doesn't drag your legs with it. If you did it without this, your legs are going to sink, your legs are going to be dragged all over.
Right, you'll like break an ankle or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
I worked with an engineer from Greece, and we came up with all these fancy prototypes, and it turns out you can go to Menards or Home Depot or Lowe's, and you can buy all this stuff.
Well, there you go. Wow. So is this something that other swimmers have used, or this you just kind of...
Nope.
You're like, I need something to
Yep,
train on.
We created it, me and Athanasius from
There
Greece. All they had, and I believe still have on the market, are parachutes. And they're not that big. They provide a little bit of resistance, but when you're swimming the distances I am in the big waves, or you're asked to pull large objects like car ferries and stuff like that, you need a little bit more than that. And the other thing is those parachutes that are on the market attach to your waist, and so they interfere with your kick. These attach to your ankles. And I've found out that even if you're in waves that are causing a side current, if this is attached to your body and your body stays linear, you're able to turn your body better and fight against the direction the waves are trying to pull you in. Where if this was attached to my waist, it's going to try to bend me in half, like a potato chip. And then it's very hard to move in the direction you want to when you're moving this way and you're looking, oh, there's my feet in front of me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you want to stay linear if you can.
Right.
And then the other thing that I do with this apparatus, and yeah, if you get a good look at this, you can buy all this stuff at these at your local hardware store.
You want to train? Can I see this?
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
The other thing I do.
And it's great at parties too,
There you go. I got a picture of myself like that, actually.
You're the ultimate, it's the ultimate lampshade on your head.
There you go. And then I turn my forearms into like boat paddles. And what you're doing is you're pulling a lot more water weight, which is more exhausting. So but it's part of the strength training.
Yeah.
Without these.
So this is for training and not for
No,
swimming.
I actually use it during the event too. Because,
oh, you do? Okay.
Because you're working harder because you're pulling more water.
But you're going faster.
Right.
Okay.
You'd be spinning in place more without them. And so basically, yeah, you still have the flexibility in the wrist, and from the elbow down, it's boat oars. So it really doesn't change your stroke at all. You get more oomph, and the resistance increases exponentially. So the harder you swim, The more water that's building up, that's trying to get through this at a quicker pace. And if you're swimming as hard as you can, this thing almost stops. You'll swim as hard as you can, but you won't be moving any faster than when you're swimming easier. And the other thing I'll do is I'll attach myself to a wall with just the bungee cords.
Yeah.
And I've yet to move that wall. I've yet to move it.
You're like, I'm working on it.
That's even a harder workout because
Yeah.
you're swimming as hard as you can and you do longer and longer sets. And it's a great strength workout. But the reason I do the bucket also is because you can get sloppy on the wall. If you're not really moving, you can get tired, your stroke can get sloppy. But if you're pulling this, you're really moving. And if you get sloppy, you're going to know in a hurry.
Yeah.
So that keeps your form better when you get tired.
So these go around your, you said in like an 8, so they go around your feet or your ankles?
They do. You kind of, you put them around your feet like this.
Yeah.
And then you cross them. And then these, well, these shoes probably will not work. Yeah, they're going to work.
Yeah, huh.
They go around like this, so they're
So that way
in
it's
a
not,
in a figure 8.
yeah. So it's not like
And then you
I'm trying
tighten
to
them
think.
down.
I'm trying to think of the motion on like,
See,
you know, like if you have bad ankles or something. I mean, like where would that strain?
see, this is the beauty of it. You still have the flexibility
Yeah.
in your ankle. And what I've learned is when you first attach them, always have it toward the instep, not the outside. And then eventually they will work its way to the bottom of your feet, which is the best position for keeping your toes from cramping. And this is all just trial and error. I mean, we
Right.
tried so many different things.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this makes my calves cramp. This makes my toes cramp. This is it. This has been tested. I mean, I've swam, well, oh my gosh. Well, my training, when I was training for pulling the bricks across Lake St. Clair, the ton of bricks, I peaked at, I think, 28 hours of pulling this thing around like this. So it's been tested.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. Oh, and the Lake St. Clair, actually, I think there's a video of you. I'm pretty sure this is the Lake St. Clair one. This is right after you came out of the water. And you look just a little bit tired.
Yeah, it's been almost 52 hours.
Yeah. Is that your longest continuous, 52?
60
60. Okay.
across Lake Superior.
Okay. So what are you feeling at this point?
Very happy to be on shore.
Yeah.
And happy that I can still do the interviews.
Yeah.
There's never been a time yet after a swim that I haven't been able to, you know, be comprehensible, you know, to be, you know, comprehensible in my speaking and, you know, thank my sponsors, talk about the charity. And it's funny because sometimes when you're out in the water, right toward the end, it's like your brain is turning to oatmeal. And you might not be able to spell your name. But for some reason, when I get on shore, it's just that adrenaline. And then all of a sudden, I remember all my sponsors.
Right.
I remember why I'm swimming, and I'm promoting the cause. And, you know, earlier, somebody would ask me from my crew, okay, Jim, just to see how alert I am. You know, who's president of the United States? Well, let's see, Jimmy Carter. And they say, well, let's see, Carter was president while he was still alive. If he says Franklin D. Roosevelt, we're pulling him from the water.
Yeah.
You know, there's always got to be some
Oh,
line
so they
in the
ask you
sand.
questions while you're doing it.
Yes.
Huh. So with this, like they're giving you oxygen, clearly. What are the immediate needs when they pull you out of the water? Like clearly the media is there, and that's the moment to talk. When it's like you just came out of the water, that's the time to talk. But what are your paramedics worried about at this point? They have oxygen for you?
Yeah, they do. And I mean, we've rehearsed all of this. I mean, you know, in a worst case scenario, we've got a defibrillator and a large pair of shears where they would cut my wetsuit, expose my chest, you know, hit me with the paddles. We've rehearsed all this. But the oxygen is something that I use the most. You can see I'm laying down. What I've learned is it's almost like coming from outer space.
Yeah, to stay horizontal then.
Right.
Okay.
You stay horizontal for a while, and I figured let's get through the questions while I'm horizontal, because when I swam across Lake Huron, you know, that was my second swim, and I was still learning. I was all cut up. We can talk about that injury if you want in a minute. But I was all cut up through the midsection. It looked like a shark attack. And so sitting down was very painful. So I'm standing up, but I really shouldn't have been standing up. And I kept starting to lose consciousness during an interview. And so I would have to stop an interview.
Which would make great TV.
Yeah, take some oxygen, and then I would afterwards say, yeah, I conduct interviews better when I'm conscious. You know, and tried sitting down. No, that's not good.
You're
and
like,
stand
no,
up, sit
yeah.
down, you know. So I was getting some more aerobics in like I really needed it.
Right, right.
You know. But yeah, so you start by laying down, then you sit up. Gradually, you take your first few steps. Your legs don't really want to work for walking after that length of time. It takes a while.
To be weight bearing, because they've been, I mean, obviously you're using your muscles, but
they've been kicking, but they're not supporting your body weight and taking steps. It's a whole different motion. And then once again, the horizontal to vertical thing, the blood's not getting to your brain the way it should when you first stand up, and you will start getting dizzy. And if you don't acclimate correctly, you will, lose consciousness. And then I've learned.
See, I get that if I'm like sitting down and I stand up really fast.
Yeah.
So I think in that way I'm kind of like a mega super athlete, is that I
Exactly.
get dizzy if I stand up really fast after sitting down.
Yeah,
so
it's kind
we
of
have
like.
so much in common.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like that, just times 1,000. That's all.
That's right. Times you just swam like dozens of miles. That's all. Hundreds of miles.
Yep. But yeah. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Glad. I need my shark shirt now.
That's right. That's right. But it's funny, because when you've got the oxygen, I don't have it on now, obviously, but when I've got the oxygen mask on, they kept asking questions.
Right, and then you're
I'm
like
like
yeah. Do you do yoga to stretch things? Do you like, what do you do to make it easier afterwards?
Usually, and it depends on what
Drink a lot of water, probably.
Oh yeah. You really need to hydrate a lot, like for especially like 3 days before the event, and then afterwards you just keep hydrating. And you start replenishing, and it's funny because you will lose weight. I mean, there's easier weight loss programs, people. There really are. But I mean, like my Lake Huron swim. Well, it's kind of funny. My Lake Huron swim, I lost 22 pounds, but I was very, very ill. I got very, very ill during that swim.
And how much of that is water versus muscle?
Well, a lot of it was muscle
fat.
tissue.
I can't imagine you had much fat
because
on your body
I was
at that point.
right. I mean, I am always somewhere usually between 4 to 6% body fat.
Right, yeah.
And so usually when I start a swim, I'm around 4. But I think.
So you don't have like extra on you because you know you're going to burn.
Some swimmers will do that.
Yeah.
But as a triathlete technically, or a multi-sport athlete, the extra weight doesn't help you biking, doesn't help you running. It does help you swim. And a little bit of it is vanity too. It's kind of like, I work too hard to put on extra weight.
To not have a 10-pack, for God's sakes.
So
Yeah.
it's like I'm not just going to eat a bunch of cheeseburgers before I get in the water. I'm just
Well,
not going to do it.
avocados or whatever.
Right.
The healthy
And
stuff.
so after Lake Huron, I mean, I was skin and bones. But Lake Michigan, 65-mile swim, I lost only 3 pounds. So, I mean, all that effort, you'd think, well, it seems like you'd lose a little more, but I really maintained, and I didn't really get ill like I did with Lake Huron. So it kind of depends on what you go through. And
you got ill how?
Well,
Like what is?
I suspect it
Yeah.
was some type of eColi.
Oh, okay. So some sort of bacteria, virus.
Yeah,
in
I
the
got a
water.
report. This is a little bit disgusting, but I got no limits. No limits.
That's right. Well, an eColi, typically, like often that's connected to like fecal matter.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And there was a pig farmer in Ontario that was caught, and obviously was in some sort of trouble. And it was during my swim, and it had been going on for, I don't know, who knows how long. But in the general area where I was coming in, he was dumping raw pig manure into the lake. And it was toward the end of the swim that I was vomiting like every 20 minutes.
While you were swimming.
Yeah, for like the last 20 miles.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah, swim, vomit.
Oh. Just because due to this.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Would it impact you that quickly?
I don't know.
I guess if it's direct, if it's, I'm just thinking through this scientifically. If it's concentrated enough, then I can see how that would make you sick. And then the actual germ gets into your body, and then probably takes, 12 hours or whatever to really make you sick.
Well, yeah,
germ.
and then I continued to be very sick.
Yeah,
Long
yeah.
after the swim.
Yeah, that's a big thing to get.
I mean, I was not really eating any food to speak of. I mean, except, you know, something through a straw.
Right.
For a couple of days after that.
Right.
But I mean, I know even unfiltered water will make you ill. I mean, even Lake Superior, as clean as that is, if it's unfiltered, will still make you ill. But, you know, if you're talking pig manure too.
Right. How much water do you take in?
Well, you try not to take in much.
Any,
but when
yeah,
it gets, the rougher it is, I mean, inevitably, you're going to take more in. And toward the end of the Lake Huron swim, it was very rocky, just a lot of rocky reefs. And our support boat couldn't get closer than like 3.5 miles from shore. So at the tail end of like a 52-mile swim, I'm on my own. Now I had one friend, and my coach jumped in with me. I mean, they just didn't leave me alone, but they swam in with me. My coach started to get extremely hypothermic. My other friend was getting quite tired. I was very, very sick. And with all of the rocks and everything, it was just rough, and we were crashing into rocks, and we didn't know if we were going to make it. And I found out from the Associated Press, I got to be pretty good friends with some of those guys, but they had written 2 versions of the story. They had written
One
my
where
death.
you croaked?
They had written my death. And then they had written my successful
I hope
landing.
they gave you a copy of that. You should
I
like
asked for it.
frame it and put it on
I
there.
asked for it, and they said
They're like, yeah, we
if
can't.
that never got out and anybody ever saw it, we would be in big trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
So I didn't get a copy, but I was really curious.
Yeah.
And then in Detroit,
I'd want to frame it.
Oh, I would too.
Sort of like the Truman wins.
Oh,
thing.
oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I wanted to see it really,
Dewey
really
wins,
bad.
yeah.
But, you know, both the Canadian Coast Guard and the American Coast Guard were looking for me. And in Detroit, they had the Mariners Cathedral. You know, when the Edmund Fitzgerald sunk and they rang the bell 29 times, they were ringing the bell for me. I mean, they were already writing me off. Families on the beach. There's about 1,000 people on the beach. It's almost midnight.
Yeah.
Great crowd turned out. But they're all praying, you know, and they're in a circle and they're crying. And, yeah, it was kind of, and then it was like arriving at your own funeral.
Yeah.
Because I told Mike, my coach, who was severely hypothermic, just go up ahead.
Yeah.
Just go up ahead, save yourself. And Steve stayed with me. But I come walking out of the water, and it was like everybody saw a ghost, you know? And it was like arriving at your own funeral. I'm like, you know, hey, rumors of my own demise are greatly exaggerated.
I think, is that the video that I think that's the video we were showing of you coming out and then you kissed.
At nighttime?
Then you kissed
Yeah.
the sand.
It was at nighttime, yep.
Yeah, yeah, that was it. So with that, like you were talking about how your coach was getting hypothermic and all that. Talk about your equipment in the sense of what you're wearing. How do you protect yourself from not just temperature, but pruny fingers and, you know,
oh, man.
Which I would imagine pruny fingers probably also impact how you swim, and it can become painful. So, like, how do you protect yourself from the things that are coming at you?
Well, yes, I do wear a wetsuit. I prefer not to because to me, well, a wetsuit's both good and bad. And it depends on how one defines a short swim and how one defines a long swim, which is different for different people. In the short haul, a wetsuit helps you because you're more buoyant. So like in a triathlon, you're going to swim faster. You're more buoyant. For these really long distance swims, it's stretching rubber with every stroke across your shoulder. So it'd be like, Candace, if I gave you a rubber band right now, you know, a pretty thick, heavy rubber band, and said, here, just stretch it like this. You'd be like, oh, this is no sweat. This is no sweat. And then 3 days later, you're still stretching that rubber band. You're like, ugh.
Yeah, yeah.
It really wears you down.
And does it like rub again? Like I think of like
Takes
rubber
your
bands,
skin
how
off.
it, yeah.
That's what happened in Lake Huron.
Yeah.
I lost all the skin off my middle section.
From the suit, from the movement of the suit.
I had to be wrapped like a mummy for 3 weeks. Couldn't wear a shirt.
Huh.
And then had to soak in a tub every day and then change the bandage. And,
Yeah.
No limits, right?
Right,
But
yeah, no,
when
absolutely.
you'd peel the bandage off, you'd peel part of yourself off with it too.
Because the new skin would sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was a very ugly situation. And I actually had 2 speaking engagements that I had committed to in that 3-week span where I had to be wrapped up and couldn't wear a shirt. So I was just wearing like a hospital gown. And I did the speaking engagement.
Oh my gosh.
And then I noticed that the people in the front row were like, they were looking at me really strange. And I looked
And
down.
the people sitting at the back of the stage were really looking at you strange in hospital gown.
And then I looked down, and my midsection was all red. I was bleeding through the bandages, and I was bleeding through my hospital gown. And I said, look, you people want reality? You got reality.
Here it is.
This is it.
See, I think coconut oil fixes everything, so I just would have slathered a bunch of coconut oil, and I'm like, okay, that'll do it. You're
now,
good.
no offense to this is nothing to do. This is not a reflection on all Canadian paramedics, okay? But the Canadian paramedics that I had,
They're so sorry, I know.
I'm sure.
They're sorry.
They
sorry.
threw talcum powder all over the open wounds to dry it up.
Yeah.
Well, that was not a good thing to do.
Right.
Because that all then, it became one with me. It became caked and hardened within the wounds.
Right.
And when I got to the hospital, this is the most painful thing I've ever had to go through in my life. A nurse had to take a brush and scrub that talcum powder out of these third-degree burns.
Oh, my God.
And, you know, I'm just like, and they had me on some medication because from the vomiting, and then, you know, I was just hiccuping constantly, and, you know, couldn't eat in the whole bit. They had me on some medication, but it wasn't a painkiller. But it was making me so I couldn't communicate very well.
Oh, my God.
So I'm trying to.
So you're feeling it, and
I'm feeling it, but I'm not really. But I'm really out of it.
I'm surprised they didn't put you under.
They should have put me the rest of the way under.
Yeah, yeah.
Or just shot me, one of the two.
You're like, right now, I'll take it.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, God. So how long did it take to heal? You said you couldn't wear a shirt for 3 weeks. You had to keep it wrapped. So that's your skin growing back. So that's probably
it took a few months. It took a few months. And I
Yeah.
mean, until this day, I mean, I'm scarred through the middle severely. So, you know.
Okay, I'm just saying coconut oil.
Oh, yeah. Well, at this point,
We'll get rid of the scars. Yeah, at this point, they're battle scars. So.
Yeah, I call them my battle scars. Yeah. And yeah, I don't even think about it anymore. But I was kind of a little self-conscious about it at first. You know,
yeah.
Take off your shirt, and it looks like, well, it almost looks like from the old Rambo movies when he was prisoner of war and they were whipping him or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, it looks like I've been tortured or something.
Huh. Well, you were.
Yeah, I guess I kind of was.
It was self-inflicted.
It just wasn't with a whip, but.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. So do you have, is that back to normal now, or do you still have to watch it? Like it's a more sensitive area than it used to be?
You know, because there's scar tissue, I haven't really noticed any restriction.
Okay.
But, you know, scar tissue is never as flexible.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
But, you know, I still get, you know, the turn and the rotation when I'm swimming. Mm-hmm. So there's really no problem there. There's no pain. The scar tissue in my shoulders are a little bit different because I've had, as you can imagine, some shoulder injuries over the years. Not as many as you would think. I used to be a baseball pitcher too, and maybe that's why. But you know, pitching.
Were you a left-handed pitcher?
Right-handed.
Because you were. Oh, I thought you were referring to your left shoulder. So okay.
Oh well, my last injury was to my left shoulder.
Okay.
But that was cutting down trees and hauling wood. That was a whole other thing.
Oh, completely unrelated to.
It really was.
Superhuman stuff, yeah.
But it did kind of bring up some old injuries and that type of thing. But rotator cuffs, swimming and pitching are really hard on rotator cuffs. And, you know, I had, I think, one rotator cuff injury, severe from swimming. And they were saying I probably wouldn't swim again. And I came back stronger than ever. That was 2002, I think. And then...
You're like, don't tell me I can't.
Yeah. And then pitching, I never had a problem. And then last summer, I had a boot camp out at my beach where I train for a bunch of swimmers that I was training to swim across the Straits of Mackinac on Labor Day. And the township said you needed more parking. So what do? I start cutting down all the trees and hauling the wood and everything. And then after 2 13-hour days of that, you know, I get in my car and I realize I can't raise my left arm to get it up on the steering wheel. And I'm like, uh-oh. And I had an August swim where I had to pull
it's sort of swimming related.
19-ton boat with a Lincoln MKC on it that somebody was going to win in a raffle.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I made it. Well, we did postpone it, like a couple weeks, and then I was able to make it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so that's something you have to watch now too.
It is. I think there is a small tear in my left. I never got the MRI.
Because you didn't want to know. You're like, no, because once I know, then I have to do something about it.
Ignorance is bliss. I'm a very blissful person. So, but yeah, because I still will get, especially when I first start an exercise, and so I spend more time warming up than I used to. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like, for instance, there's a swimmer type of push-up. And I don't know if I invented this, probably not, but I've never had anybody show this to me. It's a special kind of push-up I do for swimming. Mm-hmm. And
you can just show it if you want.
Can I?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sure they'll zoom out. Go for it.
All right. All right. Well, okay, I got to be a little bit careful here.
Yep.
But basically, you start on the floor. You got your hands in the entry position, and just like when you swim, your leverage comes from your elbows. Don't tear my shark shirt. The elbows come up first, and you pull yourself up into a push-up position, and then as far forward as you can, and as low to the ground, and then you push yourself back into that position. That's one.
Which is similar to.
Yes.
And you do that
you're going
because
through the
it's
whole
working
range of motion.
Yeah.
You're getting, you know, you're getting the push-ups in, you're working the shoulder, but you're starting all the way forward, and you're pulling yourself forward all the way into the follow-through position.
Yeah.
And so then forward and back, that's one.
Yeah.
So
and how many of those do you do?
Well, lately what I've been doing, we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but it's a very, very sobering statistic. Some say it's high, some say it's low, but one is too much. They're saying that 22 U.S. military veterans take their own life on a daily basis from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I've just been doing multiple sets of 22. And it's kind of a movement. I didn't start the movement, but it's kind of a movement that's been going around the country where people are doing, you know, usually, you know, normal 22 push-ups, sets, and however many sets they want to do. But I've been doing my sets in 22, you know, doing the swimmer type push-ups.
Yeah. And what, from a physical standpoint, what have you found that's changed? Like, what has that improved?
All of these things I've showed you, like with the bucket and tying myself to the wall and the push-ups, and nothing also like actually getting out in the water with an 80-pound military backpack, because that's going to be my next adventure.
And we will talk about that.
And that's going to be my new trademark.
Yeah.
Everything I do on land and sea will be with that 80-pound backpack.
Yeah.
So I'm getting very up and close and personal with that backpack.
Right, right.
But nothing like just getting out there and doing that.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, because it's actually working all the muscles that you're going to need.
Right, and so all of these things, sometimes it comes down to time constraints too. You know, do I have time to get to the lake? Do I have time to do all this stuff? And because there's also a lot of logistics behind the scenes. There's going to be a TV show involved in this, and there's a lot of stuff I'm doing as one of the organizers of this entire horse and pony show, or dog and pony show that we're putting on. And so if I don't have a lot of time to get to the lake, I'll just do a lot of push-ups that day.
Okay, just to do some, just to get it in.
And I've got weights downstairs on cables and different things you can do with dumbbells. And what's really important there is you simulate your strokes, but you also always do the opposite so that you don't develop a muscle imbalance. So you're working both your flexors and your extensors, and you work the small muscles as well as the big muscle groups.
Okay, and we were talking about your injuries, so I want to make sure that we get through all of those. So is there anything else that you've gotten from, I mean, the skin on the stomach was a pretty big one.
That was the worst and the most painful. The second one really snuck up on me. It was the 100th anniversary of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. And there was a 73-mile route that I was going to attempt to swim across Lake Superior. So I said, you know what, if I did a 27-mile run before the swim, right, a marathon's 26.2, so it'd be more than a marathon, and then that would be 100 miles to commemorate 100th anniversary.
Right, makes sense.
So I did the run. Problem is, I opened up a great big blister. I think it was my right foot, pretty sure. Big blister on the instep of my right foot. Big blister. Now I'm about ready to get in the water. It's never a good thing.
It's like new shoes or something.
Well,
new shoes always do that.
It's just one of those things where I thought I had them broken in well enough, but sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
And so, my paramedic puts all the antibiotic cream on it and tries to bandage it and everything. But, you know, I'm getting in the water for a few days. And so, you know, that unfiltered water was getting in it, and it became very, very infected. And I could just feel it. It was just
while
getting
you were
really,
swimming,
oh yeah, getting really, really bad. I ended up swimming 35.5 miles, you know. So, you know, roughly, you know, half the distance. And we were in a horrible, horrible current that started pushing us in the wrong direction. And they said, well, for you to make the nearest land, it would add like another extra 30 miles or something like that. And they said, well, let's take a look at your foot. And I raised it out of the water. And I was swollen from the foot all the way up to my calf, about this big around.
God, yeah.
And just beat red.
Just all infection, right?
And they're like, oh, this isn't good. We got to get you in.
Right, right.
And so I was when I went to the doctor, you know, they got me there right away. I was kind of making light of it, making jokes and everything. Doctor wasn't smiling.
Right.
He was not smiling. I'm like, okay, this isn't good. And he said, Jim, he says, I've seen amputations result from things that have looked better than this.
Oh my gosh,
and as soon as he said the A word, then the smile just kind of,
oh crap, yeah.
Yeah, disappeared from my face.
Yeah.
And that was actually a very painful injury. And that sore here was another one of those. If you like gross things, you'll love the picture of that.
Warning.
No limits. I love it.
That's right. So any ongoing things with that? Like, what was it? It was just the infection, and you had to kill off the infection, and once the infection was gone, then it was
It would
healed.
not have been a problem had I not gotten the water after the run. I mean, sure, it would have been sore like any, you know, open wound. But, I mean, we took care of it with the antibiotics right away, bandaged it, would have been fine. But getting in that water
But no
afterwards-
coconut oil. You didn't put coconut oil on it.
You know,
That would have
you're going to have to be on my crew, Candace. Coconut oil is the answer to everything.
It is.
But, you know, this was, let's see, what year was that? That was 2000, let's see, that was 2003. So
Yeah.
maybe people didn't know about
Not
coconut
so
oil
available. All
like,
right.
like they
so
know now.
Well, yeah. They didn't know. It was the
We're so much
miracle.
more advanced now, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, luckily you haven't had too many long-standing injuries. Like you haven't, I mean, for all you've done, the 19 world records, and we just talked about a few of them, you don't have anything that really seems to, like, every time I get in the water, I got to think about my neck, or I got to think about, yeah.
I really have been blessed. This last swim that I did, and thanks to Pfeiffer Lincoln, who donated a Lincoln MKC that we raffled off for Habitat for Humanity, I wanted to show that off, and so we had promotions with radio stations and fudge companies on Mackinac Island and Arnold's Ferry Line, so that they were going to have they had a Jim Dreyer world record cruise, so that they're following me to see how I'm doing, and if you bought a raffle ticket to win a car, you get a free box of fudge, and I mean, everybody wins, right?
Yeah.
And so we were doing that, but that was my first swim with that little tear here. And I don't know if I was compensating or what, but this did not bother me at all. And this rotator, my right rotator cuff got a little bit sore.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of learned not to compensate. I mean, I was really coming right off the injury, and it was my first major swim after the injury. So I don't think that's going to be an issue now, really.
Okay.
And I'm also used to, I've got a pretty high pain tolerance.
I
So-
would think so, with the giant swollen foot and all that. Yeah. Actually, I grew up vacationing in the Straits of Mackinac, so it's a beautiful area.
It
It's
is.
There's an island right near Mackinac called Boys Blank that most people haven't heard of, but that's where I was. We had like no running water, no electricity, and we just rough it out there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
growing
that's-
up. Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah.
The longest swim I ever did in the Straits, and I've probably swam it a dozen times, but it's a 4.2 mile crossing as a crow flies by water. I did an 11-mile swim there once because the currents were so bad, and I started at Bridgeview Park on the east side of the bridge, the northeast side of the bridge. And I ended up on the mainland across from Boys Blank Island.
Like over by Sheboygan.
Yeah,
And,
I thought I was going to Sheboygan.
Oh, and you went past that.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, I was even with
Or you
Boys
went-
Blank
oh,
Island.
okay, yeah.
And I mean, at the time, like, you know, when am I going to make landfall? I mean, is it going to be Sheboygan? I mean,
Yeah.
it was, yeah, so.
Huh. I remember
The currents can be something.
we crossed there once. It was, I mean, we always took a ferry back and forth, and because you can't get there another way. And it was Thanksgiving weekend, and we were trying to get back, and the winds were so high that they closed Mackinac Bridge. And so what do? Of course, we're like, oh, let's get on a ferry. So we tried to get the ferry out, and the wind blew it back in to the dock because the ferry couldn't get out. So of course, then what do? We all like pick up our bags and we go to the next ferry to see if we can get that one out.
Oh, jeez.
So we took
Maybe
that
this one
across
will be
the
better.
water. I thought we were gonna die. So I can't imagine like swimming through anything close to that, because our ride was all like, we were in a lower part of the boat, and we had this little window, and it was all sky, water, sky, water, sky,
Did you
water.
need a bag?
People around me did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, those waters get really, really rough.
They
and
do.
they're also cold. I mean, the Straits of Mackinac, especially since it's always in motion,
Yes.
you know, that gets cold.
It's not an easy swim, and what's tough with the swim I organize up there every Labor Day now is, I mean, a lot of the Michigan people get it, but even a lot of them don't, because you really need to get out there and experience it before you really get it. But then you get somebody from like Oklahoma or something, and you're, you know, who swam in a gravel pit or a, you know, some quarry or something. It's like, you know, you explain it to them the best you can, you know. But like last year, 4.2 miles as the crow flies, but there were many people that were swimming twice the distance. And, you know, we got a lot of complaints, but, you know, last time I checked, I'm not God. I cannot control Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And we did warn you that this can happen. And
Right.
It's probably the second roughest I've seen it out there in any time that I've swam in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happens, so you've got to be ready. And
Right.
so, hence our boot camp.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great that people can start to do that. So what
Yeah.
do you do in the boot camp?
2 days. Day one is swimming. You get a 5-mile swim in, because I say you've got to at least count on a 5-mile swim.
So these are people that are probably already triathletes.
There's a lot of triathletes, some
Yeah.
open water swimmers, some very accomplished pool swimmers, which, I don't mean this in any sort of insulting way.
Before I insult people,
Right.
let me disclaim it and
Exactly.
and then insult you. Okay.
You can be a very, very good pool swimmer as far as you got the technique down. I mean, you are smooth as can be. You're fast. You're grease lightning, but it's not the open water. It's like apples and oranges, and you've got to relearn everything. You really do. And so day one is they get that 5-mile swim in, and they're feeling really good about themselves. Day two is they don't realize it. They're going to get a beat down. We take them, any of the viewers who are familiar with the Saugatuck Dunes State Park area.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's got Mount Baldhead, and it's got all those
Yeah,
stairs and
Saugatuck
everything.
State Park
Oh.
dunes. Yeah, it's beautiful.
We got them running up the back side of the dunes. And
Oh, my gosh.
And they're dying. And then
Dunes are hard to run up anyway.
And then they get to the top.
Huh.
It's like, well, we're going to take the stairs down. Just get your breath. And they're thinking, oh, thank God we're going to take the stairs down. Well, every time we get to a landing, and I don't know how many landings there are. There's tons of landings because there's tons of stairs.
Yeah.
But we get to the landings, and we'll do like bear crawls down the next flight, and reverse bear crawls, and dips, and incline push-ups, and all this kind of stuff. And then when they get to the bottom, they run back up the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
And then they get to walk down the dunes. But then when we get them on the beach, then they're doing all military crawls and all this. I mean, you know, it is a wet and sandy beatdown. But then when they think they're done, we say, okay, go in the shower, rinse the sand off, put your wetsuit on, and we're all going for a 2-mile swim. We want them to swim when they're tired. Don't start fresh. Your arms and legs are like Jell-O. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's no way I'm going to do 2 miles.
Because that's what you have to do when you're out in it. You have to be that tired and keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to be beside you with kayaks. You know, we've got, you know, the medical people. You're going to be safe. You're going to be safe. But you're going to do these 2 miles, and you are going to be so confident when you come out of this. And they do. They do the 2
Yeah.
miles, and my God, I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And that's the confidence they need for stepping in the water up there.
Right. And we have my co-host Brittany, who
Hi, Brittany.
swings in for this part of the show.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Sure,
I'll make room for Brittany.
You guys
Don't
can all
mind.
squeeze in. Yeah, you have to now as initiation, you have to put those on and you have to like demonstrate swimming across
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't they tell you that?
No, well, you know, they wait till last minute to tell me everything, so I just go with it.
You got to just go with the flow, yeah.
So your equipment, I mean, we talked about some of your training stuff. When you are out swimming, what do you have on? I mean, you have the wetsuit. Like, what else is going on? You wear these sometimes because it helps you.
If I'm pulling, I will wear the paddles, you know, like I said, turn my forearms into boat paddles if I'm pulling something heavy. If I'm just free swimming, no paddles. Then it's just the suit.
Okay.
So,
and speaking of pulling something heavy, while we're talking about this, I'm going to put on some video of when you were on Stanley's Superhuman.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a show where you pulled you were called the human tugboat.
Yes, yes, that's where I earned the superhuman status.
So, yeah,
You know,
so you can talk, because this is the ultimate, like, okay, you obviously physically need to prep in every way possible. So what is it that you have or do, like even under your suit? Do you coconut oil under your suit?
well, you know, I do use a grease in the high friction areas, like the armpits, the bends of the elbows, you know, no limits, but you know, a few other places that you probably should have it.
It makes absolute sense.
Exactly.
You don't want anything coming out raw.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
And chafing, yeah, can even be that much worse.
Right, right. So that's like a swimmer's grease type of thing that you use.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there's
okay.
been different brands that have come out over the years that they keep getting better. I mean, the old school stuff really wasn't that good. But
Okay, well good. So
they're
the
getting,
technology is improving on
it.
It
is
the R&D.
improving.
Good.
The cool thing with this show
Yeah.
is, you know, and it's part of the show. They get an expert to try to antagonize you.
Yeah. Or
So
like, you can't do it.
Right. So
And
they,
this is you. So this is a 27-ton
27 tons.
tugboat, and you're just wearing something like this.
Yeah, you can see I'm wearing the paddles. You can see the pink standing right out there. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, and so these paddles. Yep.
Of course, they sped up the camera there. I'm not really going that fast.
Right. Right.
But the scientist, he weighed in on it, and he says, no, I don't think it can be done.
Right.
He can't do it. And they asked me, well, do you think you can do it? And I'm like, well, you know, nobody's ever done anything like this before. So he might be right, but according to my calculations, I think I can do it in 4 hours. Well, I did it. I think they're going to show that I did it in 54 minutes, 30 seconds.
Yeah. Wow.
So about a quarter of the time that I predicted.
Right.
And it was against the wind. It wasn't a heavy, steady wind. But this harbor also has, I mean, it's the ocean. So you got the currents coming in, you got the tide coming in, the tide coming out. Well, when you're doing TV, and you know that, you know what that's about. But when you're doing an event for TV like that, it's all on the TV schedule. So I know, you know, I want to do this during slack tide. That's the best time. Not high tide, not low tide, but slack tide. That's the best time.
Right.
And I'm going to take my nutrition accordingly so that I'm peaking right at the right time. You know, and they're like, well, we need a shot of you in your wetsuit doing this. So I've got my wetsuit and I'm on dry land and I'm just sweating and I'm sweating and I'm using up.
Because it's kind of warm in there.
Oh, yeah, and I'm using up all my electrolytes.
Right.
And then, okay, now we want you without your wetsuit. And so you're putting it on, you're taking it off. And then I missed slack tide completely.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
And when we
So then
started,
it's
it was
harder.
calm. Now the wind was in my face. And now we got a strong cross current
Ah,
that I got to battle.
because you're like, yeah.
It's the only event I did completely on somebody else's terms. But it's like, well, it's TV. I'll give you a show.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing you'd done prior to this? Like you'd never pulled a 27-ton
No.
tugboat. So what prior to this? What
Well,
was the
right
closest?
before this was when I pulled the ton of bricks across Lake St. Clair.
Okay. Okay. And that was for Detroit
Yep. In fact, I got
to
a prop.
rebuild Detroit. Oh, awesome. Love props.
Oh yes. This was the first brick that they pulled out of the 2 dinghies that I pulled. You can see it's numbered 1.
Yep. Cool.
And I had signed all of them ahead of time. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't just sign it for myself.
Right. You're like, I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign it because I just do it so well.
That's
So
right,
I'm
that's
going
right.
to sign this.
But
Want to see that? Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
So how many bricks?
I think 2 tons came to like 384 bricks or something.
Okay.
We weighed each of them I think it was something like that. It's on my website.
Okay, so the tugboat, 13 times more.
Exactly.
Plus,
But I
yeah.
see I got the call right after I did that.
Okay, okay.
But see, when I came ashore, of course, I wanted to do the whole Jimmy Hoffa thing.
To say you found Jimmy Hoffa.
Right. But, you know, I apologized for being late 'cause I swam against the current.
Yeah.
And then I made a statement. I wanted to make this statement. I think the governor was a little concerned that I might be running for his office, which I assured him I was not. But I said, look, if one man, and Detroit had just filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks earlier.
Nice.
And so I said, if one man can swim 22 miles, pulling a ton of bricks, and not drown, doesn't it make sense that we can all keep our heads above water financially if we all pull together?
Nice, yeah.
You know, and I'm like, that was a good
Great
soundbite.
visuals, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just pulled that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, and this was after like 52 hours of.
Yeah, so you're going, I mean, it sounds like you're going pretty, like, you don't have a lot of really, obviously no high-tech equipment. You were talking about you had a GPS that you were using at one point that failed on you. But, I mean, you're basically the wetsuit, the paddles, the feet are covered by the wetsuit. That's part of the wetsuit, right?
No, feet
No?
are bare.
Okay.
If I'm pulling something, of course, I've got my. Well, I will wear socks if I'm pulling something because those bungee cords will just,
Right,
or the
yeah.
ropes will just tear,
Make
up,
it
your,
raw,
tear
yeah.
up your feet.
Yeah.
There is one really good piece of information or piece of equipment that they never had when I started, and it's the spot tracker device.
Oh,
So it
okay.
sends up a signal to the satellite, shows your exact location.
Right.
You can pre-program messages. Like I had a message for my crew that everything was all right.
Oh.
And
So, like,
the
if you hit
message
a
was,
certain point,
this is the shark, fins up, I'm holding my own. Kind of
Yeah.
a little double meaning there. No limits TV.
That's right, totally.
But the crew got it. Jim's
Yeah.
doing good. And then there was a message which you never want to send that you would send to the Coast Guard. Well, I actually had a second message, like, I'm okay, but I need something. There's some supply I need. So, you know, please bring the boat out. I need something. And then the one you never want to send is you need rescue,
yeah.
you know, to the Coast Guard. But that's a very valuable.
Then there's the one
piece
to
of
the
equipment.
Associated Press to tell them which story to run.
Right, yeah, yeah. Run story A or run story B. But the thing is that thing shuts off after 24 hours. And I knew that, but I forgot it. It automatically shuts off, and you just have to just push a button and just turn it back on.
Right, but it
And
just
so it
went
shut
in sleep
off.
mode or whatever.
And
yeah.
there's my crew, and there's all the Detroit media and everybody watching it. All of a sudden, boop, I'm off the screen. It took me 4 hours to catch the fact that it was off.
Oh my gosh.
I was off the radar for 4 hours.
So they're
there was
all-
a boat out looking for me. They
Oh my
couldn't
God.
find me. And then all of a sudden, I just turned it back on, and bleep, I'm back on the screen.
They must have been freaking.
Oh, yeah.
But,
My bad.
man, for a bunch
My
of
bad.
reporters sitting there waiting for you, like, it turned into at least something they could talk about.
It was
you
a-
know?
yeah, it was-
diving into my news background, I'm like, hey, suddenly it's like, he's gone, and there's all the speculation and
Oh,
things like that.
drama.
Yeah,
Yep,
lots of drama.
drama.
Good job on that.
Yeah, I should have planned that. But see, right near, when you start getting near the Detroit River, Lake St. Clair narrows. And so you're actually following the shoreline after you cross the open lake. And when you're going by Grosse Point and some of these other areas like that. And by that time, I'm hallucinating wildly.
Well, gross points, so they're handing you champagne as you're coming.
Exactly, exactly. I appreciated
And fancy
that.
glasses.
I appreciated that.
Cheese. Pate.
Where was all that stuff? Maybe I just don't remember it. I don't know. But, you know, when you're hallucinating, if you want to see something bad enough, you will. So I saw the Detroit River. I was entering. I saw both of the banks. I'm in the Detroit River. Boy, I thought the current would be better than this. Why is the current not pushing me? Then I saw a dam in front of me. I'm like, wait a minute, the Detroit River doesn't have a dam. It's like, I'm going to go over this dam. And so I'm backpedaling. I mean, I'm hallucinating all of this. And so I'm swimming. I'm looking at my GPS, and it shows that I'm still out in Lake St. Clair. I know I'm in a river. So do I believe my eyes? Do I not believe my eyes? I'm swimming circles just figuring, what do I do? What do I do? I see, because we're not that far from shore, a news crew setting up on shore. Channel 7 in Detroit said, Jim's swimming circles. let's go find out what's going on. So this is still dark. They got the lights set up, the cameras.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm yelling at them. I'm like, hey.
Where am I?
Can you tell me how to get to Belle Isle? And so they said, well, you got to swim around this break wall. And I was right at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club.
Yeah.
And I was seeing the break
I'd say
wall.
for sure.
And the waves were hitting the break wall. And that's what I thought was the dam.
It was a dam, okay.
So I had to swim around that. By the time I got around that, the sun was coming up, and I actually did see the Detroit River.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a while I'm swimming circles, and my crew's in their vehicle. They're out looking for me. The news crew's like, why is he swimming circles? We got to find it. You know, so they went out looking for me, and yeah, we added a little drama.
Yeah. Good job.
I think they could have
That makes
handled
for
the
good
Jimmy
TV.
Hoffa thing.
Yeah, totally.
They could have handled
totally.
it.
You gotta pull that out at some
Yeah.
point. So one thing we haven't talked about is during your swim, from a nutritional standpoint, like how do you maintain that, especially if you're in a 51-hour swim? What do you do before? You know, do you carbo load? Do you know? And then how do you eat, drink, go to the bathroom? Like, how do you do all that stuff while you're swimming?
Oh, right. Well,
Obviously not sleeping. So,
right.
Yeah.
Not on purpose.
Right. Right.
But I do have video of myself swimming in my sleep.
Huh.
And the
That's
very
great.
first time that happened to me was 1998 when I swam across Lake Michigan, because the plan at night that we had was so simple. We're going to have a spotlight on the water, and Jim, you just swim in the spotlight. Well, it's easy to do when you're awake.
Yeah.
Not so easy to do when you're asleep. And a couple times I fell asleep, and I'm right-handed, so you know, I took a right-hand turn, and there was no moon, no stars. As soon as I was out of that spotlight, you couldn't see me. And so what they would do is they would stop the boat, because if they were looking for me, they were in danger of either running me over or moving in the wrong direction, and I'd chase them for the rest of my life. So they would just stop the boat and lay on their horn until I'd wake up, and then I would have to swim to them. Well, on a couple occasions, I would wake up and like, oh my God, I'm swimming alone in the middle of Lake Michigan. I mean, it's a really rude way to wake up.
Yeah.
And then you'd look and you'd see the boat kind of off on the horizon, and you just hope they're not moving away from you, and then you swim back to them. You know, since then we've learned how to do things with beacons and, you know.
Yeah, where they can find you. But
Right, so I'm visible now.
it's crazy that it's possible to swim in your sleep.
I've gotten a lot better at it.
Because the breathing and all that, like, okay, so how long, what's the longest you've slept and kept swimming
Well,
that you're aware?
Only maybe a minute at a time. I mean, they try to wake you up and you want to wake up. And I know I've gotten better at this because there's video of me swimming in Lake Superior, and my turnover rate becomes much slower. But I'm not making that right-hand turn anymore. My roll is completely even, my breathing is completely even, and I'm tracking straight.
That is insane.
I just slow down incredibly.
Wow.
That's how they know I'm sleeping. But I still keep a straight line.
And you're floating. Like, I mean, you're not like,
Right? And
I would have floaties on me. I'd be like, okay, guys, we're going to do this. I have floaties on me. If I fall asleep.
Yeah, I'm not missing a breath. It's just, it becomes muscle memory.
Right. Wow. Okay.
But as far as nutrition, yeah, I'm loading up on carbs beforehand. For the 2-3 days before the swim, you always see me walking around with a sports drink and a bottle of water. You know, you're hydrating.
Electrolytes
You really want to
yeah.
top that off. During the swim, electrolytes are very, very important. I've got electrolyte stamina tablets. So you're getting your magnesium, your sodium, your
Okay.
potassium,
that you're
iodine.
taking during?
During.
Okay, so you're taking
Yep.
pills.
And I do, right before, I've got a ritual right before I start my swim. I've got like the breakfast of champions. I take spaghetti with olive oil. I mean, you don't want the heavy sauces or anything.
Right.
And you know, the olive
The
oil,
acidic.
your omega-3 essential fatty acid, and you've got the pasta for the carbs. And then I'll usually like top it off with like a whole wheat cereal. And I'll do that like about 2 hours before I swim. Gives it some time to digest.
Yeah.
I never do any high proteins because it takes proteins about 4 hours to digest.
Right.
And
So you probably normally eat quite a few proteins.
Yes.
Because you need it for the muscle and
exactly, but not during the swim because it takes your body more to break that down. And then during the swim, you know, I keep up with the electrolytes, the sports drink, the water, but then I do a meal replacement drink. And right now, I've got to admit, I mean, I do like what they do in the hospitals, you know, Boost, Ensure, that type of thing. I mean, it's survival. It's everything that you need. I mean, it's got the right amount of proteins, carbohydrates, fats. I had the perfect meal replacement drink at one time, and they quit making it.
Oh, man.
And we went to every health food store, like we called them all over the country, and they cleared off their shelves, they cleared off their back rooms, they sent them to me. I begged the company to make it again, and they're just like, well, yeah, we can see where it'd be great for somebody like you, but there's just not that big of a market for it.
There aren't that many people doing what you're doing, dude.
Right, yeah, and I think that's really what it came down to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I keep going.
So you start to swim. Okay, so you eat a couple hours before. You start to swim, and then how long do you go? Like you go a couple hours in water. You go, you wear one of those hats with a straw.
Oh, no.
They throw beer in it every once in a while.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. When I first started out, I kind of had a regimen where, like, I think with Lake Michigan, first I was going to feed every 20 minutes. And then that was like, oh my gosh, that's just too often. Make it every half hour. And I think we even pushed it back to 40 minutes. After a while, you get to know your body well enough that I just ask for what I need when I need it. And I usually know what I need too. Like if I feel cramps coming on, cramps are always a result of one of three things. Either you need more fluids, your electrolytes are low, or your blood sugar's low. You need more glycogen in your blood.
So then you call out for pickle juice?
I will call out for, well, yeah, coconut oil. No,
Yes,
no.
I told
Coconut
ya.
juice, coconut milk. I actually do like coconut milk.
Yeah, it's really good.
But yeah, I'll
Don't try the
I'll
pickle
know.
juice.
I'll
Don't try the
actually
pickle juice. Pickle juice
know
is good for you.
when
Not when you take shots of it for your muscle cramps. No, it's not.
oh,
Yeah, no.
as I say, I haven't done the pickle juice.
I tried it. I was told, hey, try that. It'll help your muscles. Okay, great. Took a shot. Whoa. No. Don't do it.
Yeah, it won't be tops on my list, I don't think. But yeah, I've come to the point, and it takes a while to get to this point, but where I know my body that if I'm cramping, I know if I'm cramping because my fluids are low, or if I need more blood sugar, or if I need more electrolytes. So I know what to ask for. There's a different feeling with each of those types of cramps.
Right.
You have to experience it to know it.
So your health monitoring, the health monitoring you're doing is really just in your own head. Like you're not wearing heart monitor, oxygen monitor, like all the stuff that's out there that theoretically you really could be wearing.
I offered that
Yeah.
to the University of Connecticut, and they were talking with an alumnus from the University of Michigan. So I figured, okay, we got a Michigan connection, and she had worked for the Olympic Training Center out in Colorado Springs. So I'm like, okay, we got some connections here. And I said, look, I'm doing some things that nobody's ever done. I mean, not that I want to be like a laboratory rat, but I could be a test dummy as long as it doesn't interfere with my swimming. I mean,
Right.
get some baseline measurements on me before the swim, maybe get some measurements periodically during the swim, and then measurements after the swim. And eventually, I don't know, I think it was UConn, University of Connecticut, eventually dropped the ball and never did it. And I never asked again. It's not like I want to swim with a bunch of wires attached to me. But
Right.
I figured
you're gonna do the 80-pound backpack soon, so you can just shove it in there.
Well, true. University of Connecticut, are you listening? It can be anybody. I mean, I'm a Michigan guy. You know?
Yeah, but it makes sense that you're doing this, so why not just monitor it? Why not monitor your oxygen and all those things?
Just betterment of humankind.
You just never know where. You never know where it's going to come in.
Right.
Question is when did you just wake up one day and be like, I want to do this?
Oh, it's really kind of a long story. I already told Candace about how this started with water being my biggest fear from nearly drowning. And I wanted to overcome my biggest fear, figuring every other hurdle you face in life would be that much smaller. That's true. But when my father was a World War II veteran, and then after that, he was a police officer, a lieutenant, most of the time for 26 years. So, warrior in the European theater, first responder, I mean, tough guy. And when I was a little kid, for various reasons, and this will come out in my book, but I was afraid of everything as a kid, afraid of everything. And I remember when I was 7 years old, him and my brother, who was 6 years older than me, climbed up a ladder upstairs into the barn. So I grew up kind of on a farm. And
Those were scary ladders.
oh, they were
I
scary
remember those
ladders.
ladders.
Yeah.
I grew up in
I
the
was
country.
7, and I was afraid to climb that ladder. And I remember my dad, and I always idolized my dad, you know, big tough guy. And, you know, he kind of chastised me, you know, for not daring to climb that ladder. And at age 7, I mean, what 7-year-old says this? But I said, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to show you. I will be afraid of nothing. It kind of stuck with me, and I don't want to say that I'm not afraid of anything, but the things that I should be afraid of,
The things
I'm
that you
really
feared
not.
most, right?
You know, I'm more afraid of idleness, like waking up one day and not having anything to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have that as a reoccurring nightmare. Like I wake up and like, oh my God, what's my goal? I don't have a goal.
It's like
I
a
don't have
work
goal.
dream.
What am I
What's your
gonna
biggest
do?
fear?
What am I gonna do? I've got nothing to do. So that stuff scares me. But you know, what 7-year-old says that?
Right.
So there's some psychology there, and yeah, I'll go into that.
Are you like ADD or ADHD or anything like that? No.
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 I don't think so.
Just because you go, and a lot of people that do that seem to have an element of that, and you obviously have separate motivations, which drive you.
You know, I was a pretty hyper kid, so I mean, it's possible they, you know, if back in, I mean, this was the 60s, so I don't know if they ever did Ritalin. I don't think they did. Maybe they did. I don't know. But I might have been a candidate for Ritalin.
Yeah.
You know, now that I think about it, I was a pretty hyper kid.
Yeah. And now obviously you go.
I just found a different way to channel it. Yeah.
Right, right, which is obviously very positive. So one thing you are doing, you've channeled a lot of this through charity. Like, and I would imagine when you're out there and you're, you know, where does your head go? Like I would think the charity is probably a big motivator for you to keep going. That people are counting on you to do this and all of that. What else is going through your head out there?
Oh, I love it. You've touched on something great here.
Yeah.
Because I am asked time and time again, how do you keep going when every fiber of your body is begging you to quit? You know, how do you keep going? And I always say the first thing that wants to quit is your body. It is. I mean, if you don't train and put in the training you need, physically, you're not going to make it. But the first thing that wants to stop is your body. The next thing that kicks in is your mental toughness, how you've told yourself, under no circumstance am I going to quit. But what happens when you're hallucinating and your brain's turning to oatmeal and you're seeing things that aren't there, you're not thinking clear, and you know, at least before in my earlier swims I had a boat there. Now I'm doing most of my stuff alone with a tracker. You know, and I just got to, you know, can I ask myself, can I believe my eyes? You know, do I believe my logic? Do I have any logic left? You know, but when your mind and your body has had all it can take, the thing that keeps you going is your emotional attachment to your goal. And if that emotional attachment is larger than you as an individual, there's a good chance it's going to be larger than the obstacles that you face. And so that charity turns out to be by far the biggest motivator in my darkest hours. I think about the kids in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I think about the families being helped through Habitat for Humanity. And now I'm thinking about our veterans and our first responders who laid it all on the line for our freedoms.
Right. So you have a brand new project. So let's talk about that. Like you said earlier, every time I do something now, I'm wearing an 80-pound backpack. Why is that? Like, why are you doing this?
Well,
and I'm going to pull up some video too while we're talking about it.
Yeah, well, you know, the symbolism's pretty easy to figure out, you know, with the backpack and everything. And, you know, depending on what type of military mission they're on, they have a mandatory gear list they need to take. And then there's an optional gear list. You know, you can bring you can bring your rain gear if you want, but you know, we're not going to a high rain area. If you don't want to carry that extra weight, you don't need to bring it, you know, that type of thing. But on average, 80 pounds is 70, 80 pounds is pretty average for the weight of a backpack. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go with 80 pounds. And
and you're tying it in. There's a television show, right?
Correct.
Called Warrior Outdoors.
Correct.
Okay, and so now you're going to be working through them.
Yes.
To help veterans and their families by doing these swims with 80 pounds.
Yes, it's multifaceted, and let me tell you a little bit about Warrior Outdoors. This is going to be absolutely great. Warrior Outdoors, their primary mission, and they'll work with any military, whether you're active duty, whether you're a veteran, you know, retired, whatever it might be. But the main thing is post-traumatic stress disorder. And that number of 22 taking their own lives on a daily basis. I mean, can you imagine if 22 people died from mosquito bites in this country every day?
Right.
It would be the top news story every day.
Right.
And only recently has this really been brought, the awareness has been brought to the public, and still not to the degree that it should be.
Right. And with PTSD, I mean, you had mentioned earlier how you have your own flashbacks from when you almost drowned at 3, and you have your own flashbacks, triggers every time you swim. Your dad was in World War II. Did you ever see anything in him that indicated PTSD? Like, is there a personal connection with that?
You know, I really didn't see it, but my dad was a man of few words.
Yeah.
And many people from that World War II generation are like that. They really just don't talk about it. And I actually heard more stories from his job as a police officer than I did from the war. Looking back, I wish I had asked him more questions. He passed away in '93, so he's been deceased for some time. But there's a lot more questions I would ask him now, because he would answer questions if you asked him. But if you didn't ask him, he didn't really talk about it.
Right, he didn't sit down and say, let me tell you about the war, son.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I had, 2 of my grandfathers were in World War II.
Yeah.
And they didn't really talk about it unless asked. And actually, one of them would barely talk about it, even if we asked.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there had to be something there inside, but he learned how to mask it very well. And, but there had to be triggers. There's always triggers.
Right, right.
You know, no matter if we're talking about war, or we're talking about sexual assault, or you know, a car accident, or whatever it might be that caused the trauma. There's certain things that will trigger it.
Right, right.
And that's really what Warrior Outdoors, more than anything, is trying to do. Is when soldiers come home, it's usually, hey, thank you for your service. You were great. Now you're back into civilization. Good luck. Hope you find a job.
Fall back in to your life, yeah.
Yep. Hope everything's going to be fine. And it's tough to hold down a job with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
You know, you have some flashbacks. You're having a bad day.
Different things are getting triggered.
You're not
noises.
you're not interacting with your coworkers. I mean, I don't mean to make light of it, but you're a very disciplined worker. You will never find a better disciplined worker than the military. You know, I mean, they followed orders to death. I mean, to their own demise. I mean, they're great workers, but they're having a breakdown and they throw an office chair across the room. They're not going to hold that job. Right. You know? So, I mean, they're missing the camaraderie, the brotherhood and the sisterhood that they had back when they were in the military. They tend to isolate themselves more because, you know, inside the house is safe. They're not hearing these noises that trigger the PTSD. And so without that camaraderie and without an outlet for that specialized skill set, they all have the specialized skill set, this training, and it's very, very physical. And that's where I come in. And sure, they could go enter a race or something like that, but they're isolating themselves inside their house and everything. We're trying to pull them back out. So what they're doing is they're going to follow me around the world, filming me doing these world record
Warrior
events.
Outdoors.
Warrior
okay,
Outdoors.
and which network is this on?
The Pursuit channel.
Pursuit.
Yeah, so
Okay.
38 million different households. And it also can be streamed, you know, on electronic devices as well.
Okay, cool.
And it's due to start in the third quarter of this year.
Oh, good. So
Now,
brand new.
my first event that I announced is to try to swim the first triple crossing. I think there's been 4, maybe 6. I think 4. People who have done a double crossing of the Catalina Channel between Los Angeles and Santa Catalina Island. I'm going to attempt the first triple crossing, but I'm going to swim a little further than the normal route because I'm starting at the USS Iowa, which led our naval fleet for 50 years before it was decommissioned, and now it's docked in Los Angeles Harbor as a museum. So they've tied in, and so I want to swim from the museum, and it's going to be such a thrill to be on that ship. There's so much history. There's so much history on that ship. Gives me chills.
Right.
And I also want to jump off the front of it. But they tell me not to do that wearing my backpack or I will kill myself. But
Put it on in the water.
yeah. So I want to do the first triple crossing, but I also want to do it with the backpack.
Yeah.
And I know that's biting off a lot. But, you know, the military has a saying, adapt, improvise, and adjust, adapt, and improvise. And you know, I'm going to have to continue to do that, because as I've been training with this backpack, it's a lot different than when I'm going for a hike. Gravity is pulling everything down. When I'm swimming and I'm horizontal in the water, gravity's trying to pull me underwater. So you have to distribute the weight differently in the water than you distribute it when you're on land. And I'm still working on what is going to be the best way to do that. I found out some of the ways not to do it so far, and some ways are better than others, but I'm looking for the perfect distribution of the weight. But what I want to do is, on the deck of the USS Iowa, I want to lay out all the supplies, you know, like from the mandatory gear list. And if we have to add a few things to make it weigh 80, we will do that. But I want to put them in 22 different waterproof containers, 22 representing the 22 suicides per day. And that's kind of going to be another trademark. I mean, hopefully that'll work. Hopefully I'll be able to distribute the 22 items so that it works out well. As you can see, this will take a little bit of experimentation. But the swim,
which you've done so much of already with your swimming.
But this swim actually won't take place till 2017, even though the show is due to start this fall. What I then want to do with the veterans and the first responders is get them out of the house, just like everything we do on the show. Get them outdoors, redevelop that camaraderie, and then I put them through, and I say I, it's not just me, it's me and a whole crew of people, put them through like a scaled down version of what they just saw me do on TV. So maybe I swam, you know, the Catalina Channel. Well, they swim the Straits of Mackinac, which is still a tough swim. Or we go down to Missouri, we've got a chapter down there. We're looking to keep building chapters in all the different states. And there's the Lake of the Ozarks. You could do a swim in the Lake of the Ozarks. It doesn't have to be swimming either. There's something I'm working on called California Extreme that would involve crossing Death Valley, climbing Mount Whitney, and swimming. So multi-sports again.
Yeah, so you're going to get the soldiers who have come home involved in these. It will help them reconnect with their own training, the physical needs, I guess, that they're used to, and also get them with other soldiers who have been through the same thing.
It's more represents the world that they're used to. I mean, I think the camaraderie is the biggest thing, you know, because, you know, at night we're sitting around a campfire, and if they want to talk, they can. If they don't want to talk, they don't have to. The more they do this and the more they do these events, I think the more comfortable, you know, as they get to know people, the more they're going to want to talk and unburden themselves, hopefully.
Start sharing. And, yeah.
But
people who get it.
But certainly we're developing the camaraderie, and we're utilizing the skill set that they really haven't been utilizing since they got home. And they start to feel like the soldier that came home instead of the prisoner in their own house.
Right. And what, from a statistical standpoint or studies or psychology results, like, how do you know this is the thing to do? Like, how do you know this is going to really make the difference that they need?
Well, I'll tell you, we need to do more of that. We need more psychologists to weigh in, and that needs to be part of the show. It really does. This is actually quite unscientific, but in a way, it's almost like a case. It's like case studies. So, from a marketing standpoint, I mean, marketing's an art, not a science. So, from an artistic standpoint, in talking to, I mean, we've done events with soldiers already. It just hasn't been televised yet because the TV show hasn't started. And then afterwards, we'll survey them, and the results have been tremendous.
Good.
And not only our cause, but other causes out there. You know, the Gary Sinise Foundation, the Last Survivor, Last Survivor Foundation with Marcus Luttrell. They've done studies as well. And, you know, after the fact, everybody fills out surveys, and, you know, where were the improvements? You know, and it's like, yes, we're getting out of the house, getting together with my buddies. Have had, you know, when was your last episode? You know, and what was the trigger? What was, you know, that type of thing. So we've got some of that data. Now, what I really want to do is have a psychologist weigh in on this, which some of these other organizations that don't have a TV show have. So it just makes sense to me, and it's going to be better for the viewing public too, to have a psychologist weigh in afterwards to analyze these statistics for us. I mean, we can look at them and say, well, you know, clearly here's an improvement, clearly here's an improvement.
Right.
But then, you know, the psychologist can say, well, yeah, and according to, you know, the other studies that we've done, blah, 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 you know, this is right on track, or you're ahead of schedule, you know, you're doing better than some of these other studies, that type of thing. I really want to get that into the show.
So you need a partner for that.
Yes.
So if there are any psychologists who are interested.
Free publicity. Free publicity.
Well, and also really a way to help people in a way that they need, you know, and maybe this will turn out some results and long-term results that can, you know, these type of activities can start to be implemented in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's another kind of, I guess, what I would call group therapy.
Yeah.
You know, to part of the population that needs it more than perhaps anybody.
And you're connecting the Warrior Outdoors show and the challenges that you do. You're starting with the LA Catalina Island one, and you're planning on adding more. But there's a system to that, right? The system is somehow connected to your public speaking?
It is, and I'm glad you brought that up. You just read my mind, because that was the one part of this I haven't talked about yet. I'm kind of changing my own marketing philosophy a little bit. When I would sell sponsorship, and this was before Warrior Outdoors, but just for some other event I would do, I would often package my own speaking into the sponsorship. But it would get buried, you know, kind of down the list of the different sponsorship benefits you're going to get if you sponsor Jim Dreyer's record event. And I thought, you know what, this is all about Warrior Outdoors. This is all about our warriors, you know, which are both our military veterans and our first responders. So let's put in the forefront the money we're going to make in order to operate these programs that are going to be shown on TV. And not only are, well, really, I call it a win-win-win, 3 wins. Any corporation that hires me to speak, number one, you're going to get me to speak. What could be better, right? I mean, yeah, I'm the greatest speaker there is. So modest, too, very modest. You know, I'll come in and I'll fire up their troops.
Yeah.
And then they're automatically going to become a sponsor of my next quest.
Okay.
So, I mean, the prices have been adjusted accordingly. But it is a bargain.
Okay,
It's not like I just took the cost of sponsorship and added it to my speaking fee, and it's an all-inclusive fee that together is a real bargain. And then I donate half of all my speaking fees to Warrior Outdoors.
Okay.
And approximately, depends on what the quest is, but and what the program is that we're working on at that time for the Warriors. But approximately about every 25th speaking engagement is going to generate anywhere from $125,000 to $215,000 for Warrior Outdoors to implement these programs. And then I go out on this world record quest. The sponsor is a sponsor of that. It's televised, so they're being promoted as a sponsor of Jim's event on TV, you know, as the camera pans across their banner on the USS Iowa and on Jim's support boat. And if you're a title sponsor, you're on my swim cap, and then you're on the back of my backpack, which is all you're going to see while I'm swimming is the back of my backpack. So they got all of the perks of sponsorship. So you've got sports marketing, you've got cause marketing, because half of all of the money is going directly to Warrior Outdoors. And you've got a speaker who's coming in and telling his stories and all the lessons he's learned about setting and achieving extraordinary goals. So win-win-win. Go to my website, JimTheSharkDryer.com.
There you go. And so you, when you speak for these companies, they become a partner in helping these soldiers.
Exactly.
And so you're connecting it all together.
Exactly. The whole thing's connected. They connect with the soldiers and the first responders, and they connect with me. It's just like it's a triangle every time. There's the soldiers that we're helping, and so they've got great cause marketing. There's the TV show, can't get better exposure than that. And you've got the professional athlete, sports marketing, and I'm coming in and I'm firing up your troops. That's just part of the deal. And so instead of burying that at the bottom, I'm focusing on, hey, here's where the money's going. Let's just put this all together in one all-inclusive package. And it's about the soldiers, it's about the first responders, and it's about half of the money going there immediately, and the rest is going into sports marketing and all the media coverage that comes with it, and you're going to be showing on a TV show, and 38 million households, and who knows if, you know, how many other people are going to be seeing it, downloading it, or I mean, streaming it from their computer, and phones.
Cool. This is going to be exciting to watch it unfold.
Yes.
With swimming with the pack, just something I was thinking about. Like, this is going to be different for you because the weight is going to be on your back instead of, you know, connected to your feet. How does that change things for you? I mean, I would think the risk of injury goes up quite a bit, having that weight pressing down on you.
It does. I would rather, I mean, I'm saying this now, time will tell, but I would rather pull a 27-ton car ferry from my ankles than to have 80 pounds on me.
Yeah.
Because it's pushing you lower into the water. If the weight isn't distributed even, like if there's too much weight in the back, it's going to pull your legs down. Now you're swimming more vertical in the water, and you've got more body surface pushing against the water. So the resistance is that much higher. You want your feet up. You want your heels breaking the surface of your kick. You don't want too much weight up front either, because then it's going to be harder to roll and get your elbow in the recovery position and in the entry position. So when the first thing I did is I put most of the weight in the back, thinking I want it as light up front, so I've got as much movement with my shoulder rotation. That was great, except my feet sank. So I've realized you've got to find a happy medium. But I think it's safe to say no matter what the happy medium is, it's going to affect my stroke some.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to roll like you normally do. You may not get those elbows up as high as you normally do, because rolling helps you get those elbows up. It may not be as pretty.
Yeah.
But
and you'll be compensating in other ways. You know, you'll be swimming differently.
And that's why getting a lot of time in with that backpack,
the
closer I get to the event, is going to be very crucial.
Yeah.
But, you know, adapt, adjust, and overcome.
Right, right. Absolutely. Do you have anything else, Britt? Okay.
No.
I'm just
I do have one more
out
prop.
the questions. No, absolutely. I'd love
one
to
more
see it.
prop.
I could keep going with questions, but I'm kind of an endless stream of them.
This is just kind of cool.
Fun stuff.
Lake Superior, I'm gonna try to make the story very short. Lake Superior had its challenges. I swam it alone. I made it on my 6th attempt. The first 5 attempts I had a support boat. That didn't work. Each time the support boat almost got sunk. And then 8 to 10 lives are at stake. And so I thought, the only way I'm going to do this, I got to do it alone. So I got a $750 GPS. I got a dinghy. I put 250 pounds of supplies in it, and I headed for Canada, 60 miles due north. I was attached with this bungee cord. At the end, I ran into a storm with 50-mile-an-hour winds, 15-foot waves. The dinghy filled up with water, must have weighed a ton. I managed to make it to the shore through the storm, touch the side of this cliff, and made it. Luckily, a boat found me out there, got me off the cliff, or my bones would still be there.
Right.
This was all that was left of the bungee cord. This was attached to one side of the dinghy, this was attached to the other, and then in the middle, my feet were attached to another cord that was attached to the middle.
So it was like this on the dinghy.
And so you can see this side is completely gone.
It's just shredded.
I was pulling with one leg, pulling the dinghy like sideways, full of water.
Yeah, and
so
you could feel that.
Yes.
Like you could feel
So that was
the difference.
extremely, this was what was left at the end.
Oh my goodness.
And then one night, my $750 GPS failed, and on the way up there, I stopped at a convenience store at a gas station in Houghton Lake. Spent $6.99 for this wrist compass as a backup. It only tells you which way north is. It doesn't even light up at night. You got to shine a flashlight on it to figure out which way you're going. This and the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
And one night we had the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
Saved my life.
Wow.
$6.99, $750 GPS failed.
Wow.
Probably a moral to the story.
Aren't you glad you stopped?
It's good to have the basics.
Yeah.
Wow.
But these were my Lake Superior artifacts.
Yeah. Wow.
I went back to that convenience store and actually did a speaking engagement for their Chamber of Commerce.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And that was kind of fun to actually go back there and say, yeah, it was this town. It definitely saved my life.
Yeah, they must have loved that.
$6.99.
Yeah, they must have loved that. That's really cool. So your speaking engagements, like what do you know, I'm sure it's a lot about overcoming and things like that. Like what do you focus on when you do those? Like what's the message that you give that they don't get from other people?
Well, basically, it all comes down to the mindset. Just about everything. In fact, if you go to my website or my LinkedIn page, there is, or my YouTube channel, there is a video called 5 Steps to Success. Those are the 5 main things that I focus on. But if you analyze all 5 of those things, it really comes down to a mindset. You have to have the discipline to do it. I mean, you can't just say, okay, this is in my mind, but yeah, I really don't have the aptitude to follow it through. You got to be stubborn. You got to follow it through. You got to be relentless. You cannot quit. But it's how you see yourself, how you view yourself. I mean, like one thing I always talk about is, you know, we've all succeeded at things in life and we've all fallen short, which really means that we have a choice in how we see ourselves. Next time you're faced with a challenge, do you remember yourself failing or do you remember yourself succeeding? And when you get to the point, and it's something you have to work on, but when you get to the point that next time you're facing a challenge, you immediately see yourself as that person who succeeded. Now you're confident to the core. And you are in much better position to tackle it. I mean, we're fed a lot of negative activity as we grow older. When we're younger, we dream we can grow up and become whatever we want. And we're great at visualizing that success because we act it out while we're playing. And then as we get older, society starts stepping on our dreams, telling us what we can and can't do. Those good things only happen to people you see on TV. It can't happen to you. Well, you can go, it's just like taking an eraser and going up to the chalkboard and you erase that negativity. You grab a piece of chalk and you draw up your own blueprints for your own success. Because what that does, if they're your own blueprints, it gets rid of your preconceived limitations. You know how many fears are based on preconceived limitations?
All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many times we stop because of fear of failure or fear of the unknown? You know, if you fear the unknown, don't expect to see anything you haven't already seen.
And Claire, I mean, and you've already talked about how you've visualized yourself walking onto the shore and that sort of thing, but what's your biggest challenge there? Like, what's the thing that you're still battling when you're in the water or when you're trying to finish?
Well, you know, you always try to keep that visualization. Like, for instance, when I first swam across Lake Michigan, I had a picture of the Big Sable lighthouse at the Big Sable Point where I was going to finish on my bulletin board. And I'd look at it every day. And in my mind, I pictured all the media standing there with microphones in my face and that lighthouse in the background. I've got a photo of exactly what I pictured. A photo. It came out exactly. There's the lighthouse over my shoulder. Here's all the microphones. It's just like I had been there before. It's like writing a movie script, and you write the ending first, and you backward engineer it. You work backwards and to get to that point. And so, like, you see your goal as the light at the end of the tunnel, but you visualize every step you got to take to get through that tunnel, and you commit yourself to taking every step.
Right. And and I mean, my situation's different, but my and viewers already know this, but my husband came out as gay 6 years ago. And at the time, you know, despite all the trauma and the devastation, like one thing I did was, I did something similar, I guess, without realizing it as I looked at the end goal. I'm like, all right, so what's the best way this can turn out? And the best way was we're friends, we're good parents, we have 4 kids together, you know, and it really has been that thing that has kept me focused with all this other stuff going on and all the triggers and all the things I've had to deal with, you know, emotional, physical, all that. And it really has, like, it worked for me with that to say, okay, but the ultimate goal is, you know, we don't screw up the kids more in our process. And so, you know, and that's what I've aimed for. So
exactly.
It's like, in that case, I could do it. In other ways, I can't, you know? Like
it's just, you know, I use that not so much for my own personal life, but for just me in general, you know. I want this is what I want. I tell everybody, I get what I want. It does not necessarily mean it when I want it, but if I want it, it's mine. Because you visualize what you want out of life and you will stop at nothing to get there.
Exactly.
And I tell friends that too, I just can't do this. you know, so-and-so told me I'm never going to be able to do this. Well, why are you listening to so-and-so? What do you want? What is your passion? Where do you want to be? Well, I want to do this. Do it.
Hey, you girls want to go on tour together? Because you've got the right mindset. Or go for a swim with me, because you guys have the right mindset. I mean,
I've got the giant feet for the swim. I've got the giant feet.
You got the
and
paddles.
I've got the paddles.
I can float. We're good.
I've got the built-in paddles, so I think we're good on that.
Good. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, because there's always fires to fight. There's always going to be hurdles, and I talk about perseverance. Perseverance is like climbing a mountain. It's not always a direct ascent. It's never a direct ascent. You know, you're going to do switchbacks. You're going to take a few steps down to take more steps up. And if you run into a storm before you get to the peak, you might not survive, or you might not make it to the summit in the storm. But if you can survive the storm, then you can make it to the summit.
That's right. And that's a great place to wrap up. And we got to wrap up this show now. So thank you so much for being with us, Jim Dreyer.
My pleasure.
That's right, Jim the Shark Dreyer.
Thank you so much.
And please check us out, NoLimitsRadioTV.com. And we are No Limits Radio TV on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And please subscribe to us on YouTube at No Limits Radio TV. And thanks so much for joining us.